Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku become Red Ranger. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The beginning of the end of the age of quirks. The fluorescent lights of the doctor's office hummed with a sound that seemed to drill directly into the base of 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya's skull. It wasn't a painful sound, exactly, but it was there. A constant, low-frequency static that he had felt buzzing in his fingertips for as long as he could remember. He sat on the edge of the examination table, his legs dangling, swinging back and forth in a rhythm that matched the frantic beating of his heart. Beside him, Inko Midoriya twisted a handkerchief between her fingers, her knuckles white. The air smelled of antiseptic and old paper. So, Dr. Garaki began, spinning his chair around to face them. The motion was slow, deliberate. He held a clipboard in one hand and an X-ray transparency in the other. He slotted the film into the light board on the wall. I have some unusual news, Mrs. Midoriya. Izuku stopped swinging his legs. He gripped the edge of the table. Here it comes, he thought, hope blooming in his chest like a firework. My quirk. Fire breathing? Telekinesis? Maybe a combination? Is something wrong, doctor? Inko asked, her voice trembling. Wrong? In a traditional sense, perhaps, Garaki muttered, tapping the image of Izuku's foot. As you know, the presence of a quirk is usually indicated by the absence of an extra joint in the pinky toe, a streamlined evolution for a streamlined humanity. He tapped the pinky toe on the X-ray. Izuku has 2 joints here. By all modern medical standards, he is quirkless. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Quirkless. Izuku felt the color drain from his face. The static in his head grew louder, a rushing white noise that sounded like a distant ocean. He dropped his all-might action figure. It hit the linoleum floor with a plastic clack that echoed in the silence. But, Garaki continued, his bushy mustache twitching as he leaned forward, his goggles reflecting the harsh light of the X-ray. That isn't the only thing we found. Inko blinked, tears already gathering in the corners of her eyes. What do you mean? Garaki picked up a second sheet of paper, a graph with a flat line that suddenly spiked into a chaotic, jagged mess of red ink. We ran standard biometric scans. Usually, quirk factors emit a specific radiation signature. Alpha, beta, gamma waves. Izuku has none of those. The doctor paused, looking at the boy with a gaze that wasn't pitying, but calculating. However, his bioelectric field is loud. Loud? Izuku squeaked. It's unlike anything I've seen, Garaki admitted, scratching his chin. It's not a quirk factor. It's dormant energy. Deep cellular resonance. It's almost like static interference on an old radio. We tried to isolate it, but the equipment malfunctioned. It shorted out the EKG machine twice. He looked at Izuku, his eyes narrowing behind the goggles. You feel it, don't you, boy? A buzzing? Izuku nodded slowly. In my fingers. Sometimes in my teeth. Garaki sighed and tossed the clipboard onto the desk. It's an anomaly, but it creates no external effect. It doesn't allow you to secrete acid, or grow giant, or control fire. Whatever energy is inside you, it is locked behind a door that has no key. For all intents and purposes, you are quirkless. The hope that had bloomed moments ago withered and died, leaving behind a cold, hollow ache. The buzzing in Izuku's head didn't stop. If anything, it felt like it was screaming in frustration. 10 years later, the static was worse when it rained. Izuku sat at his desk at Aldera Junior High, staring blankly at the blackboard. The lesson was about the history of the quirk emergence in Xingqing City, a story he had memorized by the time he was 6. He wasn't listening. He was trying to massage the headache away from his temples. Buzz. Hum. Crackle. It had been 10 years since the diagnosis. 10 years of being Deku. 10 years of being the evolutionary dead end. The world was a vibrant tapestry of superpowers. People with engines in their legs, people made of wood, people who could manipulate water. And then there was Izuku, a relic of a bygone era. Midoriya, the teacher's voice cut through the static. Since you're muttering to yourself again, why don't you read the next passage? Izuku jolted, his notebook sliding off his desk. I I wasn't. Yes, sir. The class erupted in snickers. Stupid Deku, someone whispered. Probably muttering about how to grow a quirk. He's quirkless and creepy. Izuku kept his head down, reading the passage with a shaking voice. He could feel his eyes burning into the back of his neck. Katsuki Bakugo. When the bell rang, signaling the end of the day, the torment didn't end. It simply changed venues. Izuku was packing his bag, carefully sliding his hero analysis for the future No. 13 into the main pocket, when a hand slammed onto his desk. Smoke curled from the palm, singing the wood. We aren't done talking, Deku, Bakugo growled. He stood with a slouch, his uniform unbuttoned, flanked by his two lackeys. He snatched the notebook before Izuku could react. Kaken, please, give it back, Izuku pleaded, reaching out. Bakugo looked at the cover. Hero analysis? You're still on this? He scoffed, looking at his friends. This guy is delusional. He thinks if he writes enough notes, the universe will pity him and give him a cape. Boom! With a casual flex of his palms, Bakugo detonated a small explosion against the notebook. Izuku watched in horror as the pages blackened and curled. Bakugo then tossed the charred book out the open window. It fluttered down toward the koi pond below. Here's a reality check, Bakugo said, leaning in close. The smell of nitroglycerin was suffocating. UA isn't accepting trash. Even if they let you take the exam, you'll die in the practical. I'm doing you a favor. Izuku trembled. He wanted to scream. He wanted to hit him. He wanted to do something. But the static in his body felt heavy today, weighing down his limbs like lead. Bakugo turned to the door, pausing at the threshold. He looked back over his shoulder, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. You know, if you want to be a hero that badly, there might be a quick way. The room went silent. Take a swan dive off the roof of the building, Bakugo said, his voice terrifyingly casual. And pray you'll be born with a quirk in your next life. Izuku stood frozen. The cruelty of it took his breath away. He turned to face Bakugo, teeth gritted, a retort forming on his lips, but Bakugo's hand crackled with menacing sparks. Izuku flinched. He hated himself for it, but he flinched. Bakugo laughed and walked out. Left alone in the classroom, Izuku stared at the empty doorway. The buzzing in his head shifted. It wasn't a static hum anymore. It was a low, rhythmic thrumming. Like a drumbeat. Dum-dum. Dum-dum. Stupid, Izuku whispered to himself, grabbing his bag. Stupid Kaken. He walked down to the courtyard to retrieve his notebook. It was soaked, fish nibbling at the edges. My dreams, he muttered, shaking the water off the pages. Fish food. The underpass. The walk home was a blur of depression. Izuku took the long way, avoiding the main streets where he might run into Bakugo or his classmates. He found himself walking through a tunnel underpass, the shadows long and cool. He slapped his cheeks. Don't let it get to you, Izuku. All the top heroes had obstacles. This is just your origin story. You just have to try harder. Work harder than anyone else. He laughed, a dry, bitter sound. Who am I kidding? The manhole cover behind him rattled. Izuku stopped. The static in his head spiked violently, a screeching warning that made his vision blur. It wasn't intuition. It was a visceral reaction, like his nerves were on fire. Danger! He spun around just as the sludge erupted from the sewers. A massive, amorphous wave of dark green fluid coalesced into a towering shape with bulging, manic eyes and a jagged maw of yellow teeth. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain gurgled, his voice wet and distorted. Izuku took a step back, his legs trembling. The villain? Don't worry, kid, the sludge surged forward, faster than something liquid should move. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then it'll all be over. Izuku turned to run, but the sludge lashed out like a whip. It wrapped around his ankles, yanking him off his feet. He hit the concrete hard, the air driven from his lungs. Before he could scream, the cold, foul-tasting slime forced its way into his mouth and nose. I can't breathe. Don't struggle, the villain hissed, the fluid tightening around Izuku's body. I just need to hide inside you for a while. Usually, I go for people with quirks to mask my signature. But a quirkless vessel? Even better. Empty space. Empty. The word echoed in Izuku's fading consciousness. Empty space. That's all I am. His vision began to tunnel. Black spots danced before his eyes. He clawed at the fluid, his fingers sinking uselessly into the muck. The static in his head was deafening now, drowning out the villain's laugh. It sounded like a roar. An ancient, beastly roar. Is this it? Izuku thought, his strength leaving him. Dying in a sewer, murdered by a villain no one will remember, having achieved nothing? No, the thought wasn't his. It felt older. Suddenly, the manhole cover flew into the air with a clang. Have no fear! A booming voice shattered the tension. A massive figure stomped into the tunnel, muscles rippling, a smile plastered on his shadowed face. For I am here, All Might, the sludge villain shrieked. All Might! You persistent bastard! He lashed out with a tentacle of slime. All Might ducked under the attack, moving so fast he was a blur of colors. Texas. Smash! The punch didn't even connect physically. The wind pressure alone was like a hurricane. The tunnel turned into a wind tunnel, the force blowing the sludge apart, separating it from Izuku instantly. The villain scattered into droplets, splattering against the concrete walls. Izuku hit the ground, gasping for air, coughing up bile and slime. He looked up, his vision blurry, to see the towering figure of his idol standing over him. Apologies, young man. All Might boomed, gathering the scattered sludge into empty soda bottles with blinding speed. I got a little carried away chasing this slippery fellow. Are you all right? Izuku stared. The static in his head had vanished, replaced by pure the rooftop. Wait! Don't go! Izuku had grabbed onto All Might's leg as the hero launched himself into the sky. It was a reckless, stupid move, but desperation made people do reckless things. Now, they stood on the roof of a generic office building. Izuku was panting, his heart racing. All Might was already turning to leave. I really must be going, young man. I have to deliver this guy to the police. Wait! Izuku yelled, squeezing his eyes shut. I have to ask you. I have to know. All Might paused. I have no quirk, Izuku confessed, the words tumbling out. I'm bullied every day. Everyone says I'm useless. But I want to save people. I want to be like you. Can, he looked up, tears streaming down his face. Can a quirkless person be a hero like you? The silence stretched. The wind whistled over the rooftop railing. Suddenly, steam began to pour off All Might's body. The massive, muscular form seemed to deflate. With a poof, the symbol of peace vanished, replaced by a skeletal, gaunt man with sunken eyes, coughing up blood. Izuku screamed. An imposter? I assure you, the skeletal man wheezed, wiping blood from his chin. I am All Might. He sat down heavily against the railing and lifted his shirt. Izuku gasped. A massive, spiraling scar covered the man's entire left side. It looked like a crater. 5 years ago, All Might said softly. A villain did this. My respiratory system is destroyed. My stomach was removed. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day. 5 years ago? Izuku whispered. Toxic chainsaw? You know your stuff, All Might chuckled darkly. But no. This was a fight the public doesn't know about. I smiled to hide the fear, kid. To trick the fear inside me. He looked Izuku in the eye. The gaze was piercing, but heavy with a sad reality. Pros are constantly risking their lives, All Might said. Some villains just can't be beaten without power. So no. I cannot honestly tell you that you can be a hero without a quirk. The world shattered. It wasn't Bakugo saying it. It wasn't a doctor. It was him. If you want to help people, All Might continued, standing up and opening the door to the stairwell, become a police officer. They get teased, but it's a fine profession. He paused at the door. It's good to dream, young man. But you have to be realistic. The door clicked shut. Izuku stood alone on the roof. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the city. The static returned. It wasn't a buzz anymore. It was a low, mournful thrum. Realistic. Izuku walked to the railing. He looked down. The cars looked like toys. The people were ants. Take a swan dive. He gripped the railing. His knuckles turned white. He leaned forward, looking into the abyss. The wind whipped his hair. Izuku choked out. I just wanted to help. He stepped back from the edge. He wasn't going to jump. He wasn't that brave, or that cowardly. He was just nothing. He was the empty space the villain had talked about. The fire. Izuku walked aimlessly. He didn't want to go home. He didn't want to see his mom's worried face. He just walked, letting his feet carry him wherever. Then he heard it. An explosion. He looked up. Smoke was billowing into the sky a few blocks away. Instinct kicked in. The instinct of a fanboy who chased villain fights for notes. He started running before he remembered. I don't do that anymore. Being realistic. But his legs didn't stop. He arrived at the Tatooine shopping district. A crowd had gathered, held back by police tape. Flames roared from the alleyway, licking up the sides of the buildings. Heroes were there, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, but they were standing around, looking helpless. Why aren't they doing anything? Izuku muttered, pushing through the crowd. They can't get close. A bystander yelled. The villain has a hostage. It's that sludge guy from earlier. Izuku's blood froze. The sludge guy? But All Might caught him, unless I made him drop the bottle when I grabbed his leg. Guilt crashed into him like a freight train. This is my fault. He looked into the flames. In the center of the inferno, the sludge villain had grown larger, feeding on the chaos. And trapped in the center of the slime, struggling against the suffocation, was a familiar head of spiky, ash-blonde hair. Kaken. Bakugo was firing off explosions, but they were uncontrolled, only feeding the fire. His eyes met Izuku's across the crowd. Bakugo's eyes weren't angry. They were terrified. They were screaming for help. The static in Izuku's head stopped. The silence was absolute. Don't go! Death Arms yelled. It's suicide. Izuku didn't hear him. He didn't think. He didn't weigh the pros and cons. He ran. The awakening. You idiot! Stop! Kamui Wood shouted. Izuku ducked under the police tape and sprinted toward the inferno. The heat was blistering. It singed his eyebrows and dried his eyes instantly. You again? The sludge villain roared, turning his massive liquid body toward the small boy charging at him. I'll kill you this time. Izuku threw his backpack. It was a pathetic attack, but the bag hit the villain in the eye. The fluid recoiled for a split second. Izuku clawed at the slime covering Bakugo's mouth. Kaken! Breathe. Why? Bakugo coughed, his voice rough. Why are you here? I don't know. Izuku screamed, tears evaporating on his face from the heat. My legs moved on their own. You looked like you were asking for help. The sludge villain recovered. He towered over them, a tidal wave of death. Die! A massive tentacle swung down. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. He raised his arms in a futile attempt to shield Bakugo. He waited for the impact. He waited for death. But deep inside him, deeper than his DNA, deeper than the quirk factor he didn't have, a lock shattered, the static returned. But it wasn't static. It was a connection, grid connection established. The voice wasn't spoken. It was downloaded directly into his nervous system. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. The descending sludge tentacle hung suspended in the air. The fire stopped flickering. Izuku opened his eyes. The world had lost its color. Everything was grayscale, except for a faint, pulsating grid of red lines that covered the ground, the buildings, and the air itself. What is this? User identified, Izuku Midoriya. Status, worthy. Source, Tyrannosaurus. A bolt of red lightning, not from the sky, but from nowhere and everywhere, struck Izuku. It didn't hurt. It felt like being plugged into a nuclear reactor. The world snapped back to normal speed. A shockwave exploded outward from Izuku, blasting the sludge tentacle back. The crowd gasped. The heroes shielded their eyes. Izuku stood there, gasping. On his left wrist, shimmering into existence from a matrix of red light, was a device. It was chunky, silver and red, with a golden coin embedded in the center depicting a prehistoric beast. He didn't know what it was. He had never seen it before. Yet, his muscles knew the weight of it. His mind knew the combination. It was instinctual, primal knowledge flooding his brain, the morphin grid. The sludge villain recoiled, confused. What is that? A support item? Izuku looked at the device. He looked at Bakugo, who was staring at him with wide, shocked eyes. He looked at the villain. He wasn't afraid anymore. The fear had been burned away by the red lightning. I don't know what this is, Izuku whispered, his hand hovering over the device. But I know what to do. He stood up straight. He planted his feet. He raised his left arm and brought his right hand over the device. He took a deep breath, and shouted a phrase that felt like it had been waiting in his throat for centuries. It's morphin time! The device flared with blinding crimson light. Tyrannosaurus! The crowd shielded their eyes again as a pillar of red energy erupted around Izuku. Within the light, matter materialized. A red bodysuit, tight but woven with a strange, metallic fabric. White diamond shapes formed on the chest. Boots and gloves clamped onto his limbs with the hiss of hydraulic pressure. A golden shield materialized on his chest, and finally, a helmet. Red, sculpted in the likeness of a roaring T-Rex, formed in his hands. He snapped it onto his head. The visor locked into place with a mechanical shing. The light faded. Standing between Bakugo and the villain was not a timid middle schooler. Standing there was the Red Ranger. Tyranno power. Inside the helmet, Izuku's eyes darted around. A heads-up display, HUD, glowed in his peripheral vision. Armor integrity, 100%. Weapon systems, online. Physical enhancement, active. What the hell are you? The sludge villain screamed, lashing out again. Izuku reacted. But he didn't just react, he moved with impossible speed. The suit enhanced his reflexes, guiding his movements. He caught the sludge tentacle with one hand. Squish. The grip strength was immense. Izuku could feel the servos in the gloves whining. Izuku's voice was amplified by the helmet, sounding deeper, robotic. I am the Red Ranger, he pulled. With a grunt of effort, he ripped the sludge tentacle apart, freeing Bakugo completely. He grabbed Bakugo by the collar of his school uniform and hurled him backward. Bakugo flew 20 feet, landing safely in the arms of Kamui Woods. Get back! Izuku ordered the heroes. Kid! You can't fight him! Death Arms yelled. Watch me, Izuku said. The sludge villain, enraged, grew to his full size, towering over the buildings. I'll crush you, you little tin can! He slammed two massive fists down. Izuku didn't dodge. He jumped, the servos in his legs engaged. He rocketed 30 feet into the air, clearing the attack effortlessly. The world slowed down again as he crested his jump. Weapon summon, power sword. Izuku reached toward his hip. Red light coalesced in his grip, hardening into a broad, double-edged sword made of an alien metal that shimmered with energy. Power sword. Gravity took hold. Izuku fell toward the villain, the sword trailing a ribbon of red energy. He slashed. It wasn't a technique he had learned in a dojo. It was a strike guided by the grid. The blade cut through the sludge not like a knife through butter, but like a laser through mist. The energy from the blade cauterized the slime, preventing it from reforming instantly. The villain howled. Izuku landed in a crouch, the pavement cracking beneath his boots. He spun around. The villain was trying to reform, but the red energy was inhibiting his regeneration. Finish it, a voice whispered in his mind. Izuku raised the sword. He ran his hand along the blade, energizing it. The sword glowed with a blinding crimson aura. Energize! He swung the sword horizontally. A wave of red plasma erupted from the blade, shaped like a T-Rex's jaw. It flew across the alleyway, slamming into the sludge villain. Boom! The villain didn't die, but he exploded. The slime lost all cohesion, scattering into thousands of harmless droplets that rained down on the street. The fire was blown out by the sheer force of the energy discharge. Silence descended on the shopping district. Izuku stood amidst the steam and debris, the power sword humming in his hand. He was panting, but he didn't feel tired. He felt powerful. The HUD blinked. Threat neutralized. Energy reserves low. The red light engulfed him again. The armor dematerialized, folding back into the morpher on his wrist. Izuku stood there in his tattered school uniform, soot on his face. He swayed. The adrenaline crash was instant. His knees buckled. As he fell forward, a large hand caught him. Izuku looked up weakly. All Might was there, in his buff form, staring at Izuku with an expression of utter bewilderment. Young Midoriya. All Might whispered. What was that? Izuku smiled weakly. He tapped the device on his wrist. I think. Izuku mumbled, his eyes rolling back in his head. I think I found my own way. And then, darkness took him. Epilogue: The signal. Deep beneath the earth, in a chamber that had not seen light for 10,000 years, a console flickered to life. Dust shook off amber crystals. A robotic voice, ancient and glitchy, echoed in the void. AIE? Zordon! Zordon, wake up! A tube in the center of the room illuminated with a pale blue light. A face, vague and shifting like smoke, appeared within it. I am awake, Alpha, the entity rumbled. The red grid crystal has been activated. But who activated it? The scans show a human boy. A quirkless one. Quirks are biological mutations, Zordon replied, his voice resonating with ancient wisdom. The grid is the spirit of the universe. It chooses based on the heart, not the genes. The boy has awakened the power. But he has also awakened the signal. The signal? Yes. Rita. Zed, the old enemies. If the light has returned, the shadow will follow. We must prepare him, Alpha. The new age of heroes has begun. And Zordon? Yes? He's going to need a team. In the darkness of the command center, 5 other colored gems, blue, pink, black, yellow, and green, began to pulse with a faint, rhythmic light. The power you hold is not a gift, young Midoriya. It is a responsibility older than the concept of heroes. The waking world. Consciousness returned to Izuku Midoriya in fragments. First, there was the smell. It was sharp, sterile, and chemically aggressive, the unmistakable scent of a high-end hospital room. Then came the sound, the rhythmic, reassuring beep-beep-beep of a heart monitor, punctuated by the low hum of air conditioning. Finally, there was the weight. His left arm felt heavy. Not numb, not asleep, but physically heavier, as if he were wearing a lead weight on his wrist. Izuku blinked his eyes open. The ceiling was white, generic, and uninteresting. He tried to sit up, but a wave of vertigo slammed him back into the pillows. His entire body felt like it had been run over by a truck, then put through a blender, and finally reassembled by someone who didn't quite know how human anatomy worked. Every muscle fiber screamed in a low, dull ache of exhaustion. Easy, kid. You've been out for 2 days. The voice was gruff, familiar. Izuku turned his head slowly. Sitting in a chair by the window, peeling an apple with a small knife, was a man in a tan trench coat and a matching fedora. Detective Naomi Satsukachi. Detective? Izuku croaked. His throat felt like sandpaper. What happened? Tsukachi didn't answer immediately. He finished peeling a strip of apple skin, let it fall into a waste bin, and then looked at Izuku with a gaze that was equal parts professional curiosity and profound confusion. That is the question of the century, isn't it? Tsukachi said. He stood up and walked over to the bed. The official report says you engaged the sludge villain in the Tatooine shopping district. You saved Katsuki Bakugo's life. Then you passed out from what the paramedics called extreme metabolic exhaustion. Memories flashed in Izuku's mind. The fire. The fear. The voice in his head. It's morphin time. The red lightning. The suit. Izuku shot up in bed, ignoring the vertigo. He looked at his left wrist. It was there, clamped tight against his skin, sitting just above the ulna bone, was the device. It was sleek silver metal with red accents, looking like an oversized watch from a sci-fi movie. In the center lay a golden coin with the relief of a prehistoric beast, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It hummed against his pulse, a warm, vibrating sensation that felt less like a machine and more like a sleeping cat. We tried to take it off, Tsukachi said, crossing his arms. The doctors, the support tech experts, we even had a metal manipulation hero try to unlatch it. It wouldn't budge. It's not just attached to you, Midoriya. The scans show it's bio-bonded to your nervous system. It's feeding off your bioelectricity. Izuku ran his right thumb over the cold metal of the coin. It's not a quirk. No, Tsukachi confirmed. We checked your x-rays again. Still 2 joints in the pinky toe. still zero quirk factor. Whatever that thing is, it's external technology. But the energy readings we got from the site? They don't match anything in the database. Not thermal, not kinetic, not standard electricity. The door to the hospital room slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Thank you, detective. I'll take it from here. Izuku froze. That voice, walking into the room, was a skeleton of a man. He wore a baggy yellow suit that hung off his sharp shoulders like laundry on a wire. His eyes were sunken, shadowed pools of blue, and blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. All Might? Izuku whispered. Tsukachi nodded to the skeletal figure. He's all yours, Tashinori. I'll make sure the nurses stay out for a while. The detective tipped his hat to Izuku and left the room, the door clicking shut behind him. Silence stretched between the boy and the number one hero. All Might dragged the chair closer to the bed. He looked tired. More tired than Izuku had ever seen a human being look. But his eyes, they were burning with an intensity that made Izuku want to sit up straighter. Young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice raspy. You have a lot of explaining to do. But first, I suppose I owe you an apology. A apology? Izuku stammered. No. You saved me. Well, technically I jumped in, but I told you to be realistic, All Might interrupted, his tone somber. I told you to give up on your dream. And then, not 3 hours later, you ran into a fire that pro-heroes were afraid to touch. You moved when I couldn't. All Might leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. And then, he pointed a bony finger at the morpher on Izuku's wrist. You did something that hasn't been done in 6,000 years. Izuku stared at the device. 6,000? Get dressed, kid, All Might said, standing up and coughing into a handkerchief. We can't talk here. The walls have ears, and what we need to discuss is older than this city. Older than Quirks, the sanctuary of the grid. The ride was silent. All Might drove a nondescript black sedan, taking a winding route through the city to avoid the press. They eventually arrived at the Might Tower, All Might's personal agency headquarters in Roppongi. But they didn't go to the penthouse. They didn't go to the offices. All Might led Izuku into a private elevator in the back of the parking garage. He placed his hand on a biometric scanner, then scanned his retina, and finally punched in a code that was so long Izuku lost track halfway through. Level Omega, the elevator's automated voice chimed. Descent initiated. The elevator didn't go up. It went down. And down. And down. The sensation of dropping was intense, popping Izuku's ears twice. Where are we going? Izuku asked, clutching his backpack straps. To the Foundation, All Might replied. When I built this tower, I didn't just build an agency. I built a fortress to protect a secret. The doors opened. Izuku gasped. They were in a massive, cavernous chamber. The walls were lined not with concrete, but with a strange, jagged rock that pulsed with a faint, bioluminescent glow. The air was cool and smelled of ozone and petrichor, like the air right before a thunderstorm. In the center of the room stood a command console that looked like a mix of high-end support tech and ancient, crystalline architecture. Banks of monitors displayed global maps, energy frequencies, and seismic readings. But what caught Izuku's eye were the 5 pedestals arranged in a semicircle behind the console. 4 of them held small, glass cases. Inside each case sat a coin, identical in size to the one on Izuku's wrist, but with different reliefs. A mastodon. A triceratops. A saber-toothed tiger. A pterodactyl. The center pedestal, the one meant for the Tyrannosaurus, was empty. Shattered glass lay around it. Welcome, All Might said, his voice echoing in the vast space, to the command center. He walked over to the console and pressed a series of buttons. A massive holographic tube in the center of the room flared to life. A face didn't appear, but a waveform of pure energy oscillated within the tube. Identity confirmed, Tashinori Yagi. Guardian designation, Zordon proxy, a computerized voice boomed. It wasn't robotic like a GPS. It sounded ancient, weary, and wise. It still works. All Might muttered, relieved. He turned to Izuku. Midoriya. What do you know about the history of quirks? Everything. Izuku said automatically, shifting into student mode. The glowing baby in Xinqiang City. The spread of the metagene. The collapse of society followed by the age of vigilantes, then the establishment of the hero system. That is the history of humanity, All Might corrected. But the history of power goes back much further. All Might gestured to the glowing walls. Long before the glowing baby, long before recorded history, there was an energy field that connected all living things. It flows through the earth, the stars, and the space between atoms. It is the binding force of the universe. Izuku looked at the walls. The force? Close, All Might chuckled. We call it the morphin grid. He walked over to the pedestals, running a hand over the glass case of the Triceratops coin. In ancient times, guardians were chosen by the grid to protect the planet from threats that originated from the stars or other dimensions. They were the Power Rangers. They didn't have quirks. They drew power directly from the grid to transform their bodies, summon machines, and wield weapons of immense destruction. Izuku looked at his wrist. So, I'm a Power Ranger, you are the Red Ranger, All Might said gravely. The leader. But, why did it stop? Izuku asked. If this power existed, why did quirks take over? All Might sighed, his skeletal frame shuddering. Evolution is a funny thing. As humanity began to mutate biologically, developing quirks, our connection to the spiritual energy of the grid was severed. Our bodies became too loud, biologically speaking, to hear the grid's frequency. The grid went dormant. The power coins entered a state of hibernation. For centuries, they were just museum pieces, useless artifacts. All Might turned to face Izuku fully. My master, Nana Shimura, found this chamber. She realized that one for all, my power, was unique. It wasn't just a quirk. It was a stockpile of power that mimicked the frequency of the grid. She believed that one for all was humanity's subconscious attempt to recreate the power of the Rangers. He pointed to the shattered glass on the central pedestal. I have guarded these coins for 30 years. I expected them to sleep forever. But 2 days ago, the red coin woke up. It smashed through its containment, flew miles across the city in seconds, and attached itself to you. All Might's blue eyes bored into Izuku. It chose you, Midoriya. Not because of your genetics, but because you were the only one in that fire who acted with the pure, unadulterated spirit of a hero. And because you are quirkless. Because I'm quirkless? You are an empty vessel, All Might explained. You have no biological noise. No quirk factor to interfere with the signal. You are the perfect conduit, the burden of choice. Izuku stared at the floor. The information was too much. Ancient aliens? Magic grids? It was insane. And yet the device on his wrist hummed, and he felt a strange calmness whenever he touched it. So, Izuku started, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and hope. You're saying I can be a hero? With this? Yes, All Might said. You can be more than a hero. You can be a ranger. Izuku clenched his fists. He looked up at All Might, the question he had wanted to ask on the roof burning in his throat. All Might, you said you were looking for a successor. For one for all. All Might stiffened. I did. If I have this potential, if I have the heart of a hero. Izuku took a step forward. Can I be your successor too? Can I have one for all in the Ranger power? Imagine how strong I would be. I could save everyone. The silence that followed was heavy and cold. All Might closed his eyes. He looked pained. No, young Midoriya. Izuku felt like he'd been slapped. Why? Is it too much power? It is incompatible, All Might said softly. One for all is a hoarding quirk. It takes power and holds it. The morphin grid is a river. It flows through you. If I were to give you one for all, the two energies would conflict. The grid requires a pure vessel. If you take my quirk, the connection to the grid would sever. The morpher would deactivate. Or worse, the feedback would kill you instantly. Izuku looked down at his hands. So, I can't be like you. You cannot be me, All Might said, walking over and placing a large hand on Izuku's shoulder. But that is a good thing. The world already has a symbol of peace. And look at me, Midoriya. Look at what it costs. He gestured to his emaciated body. The symbol of peace is a pillar that stands alone. It is a lonely, crushing existence. But the Rangers. All Might looked back at the 4 other coins. The Rangers were never meant to stand alone. They are a team. A spectrum. All Might knelt down so he was eye level with Izuku. The grid didn't choose me. It didn't choose Endeavor. It chose you. You have a destiny that is yours alone. You don't need my power, Izuku. You have the power of the Tyrannosaurus. The power of the king. Izuku looked at the red coin. He thought about Bakugo. He thought about the fire. He thought about the feeling of the sword in his hand, the feeling of being capable. Izuku sniffled, wiping a tear from his eye. I just want to save people. And you will, All Might promised. But first, we have to make sure this power doesn't kill you. The 10 months of hell. The training began the next morning. All Might called it the American Dream Plan, but Izuku quickly renamed it the Grin Man Torture Regiment. The location was the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It was a garbage dump, a graveyard of trash that had washed up over decades. It was the perfect place to build muscle without drawing attention. Listen well, Midoriya. All Might shouted, sitting atop a pile of refrigerators in his buff form, which he could only maintain for about an hour now. The Morphin Grid is not magic. It is energy. To channel energy, you need a conductor. Right now, your body is a copper wire trying to channel a lightning bolt. If you morph again in this state, your nervous system will fry like an egg. Yes, sir! Izuku yelled, trying to drag a massive truck tire through the sand. You need to build a vessel capable of withstanding the G-forces of the suit and the psychic strain of the grid. You have 10 months until the UA entrance exam. You will clean this entire beach. The whole beach? Izuku shrieked. Every scrap. And that's not all. Month 1-2, the physical foundation. The first 2 months were purely physical. Izuku hauled trash, ran laps, and ate a diet plan All Might had written out in terrifying detail. But there was a twist. Don't just lift it. All Might instructed. Feel the coin. Izuku had to wear the morpher constantly. He couldn't take it off anyway, but All Might insisted he focus on it. The grid responds to will, All Might explained. When you lift that fridge, visualize the energy flowing from the coin into your arms. Don't morph. Just flirt with the power. It was exhausting. Izuku would go home every night with his left arm throbbing. The static in his head, the connection to the grid, was a constant buzzing noise. He had to learn to tune it out, to treat it like background music rather than a distraction. By the end of month 2, Izuku had cleared a small section of the beach. His muscles were starting to show, faint lines of definition on his arms and back. Month 3, 4, 5, the mental connection. Today, All Might said, standing in the center of the cleared patch of sand, we meditate. Izuku blinked. Meditate? But the trash will wait. Your mind is cluttered. Anxiety. Fear. Hero worship. The grid requires focus. All Might introduced Izuku to the deeper functions of the command center. He couldn't teach Izuku how to use the morpher technically. All Might was a punch-first kind of guy. But he could help Izuku access the history of the grid. Izuku would sit in the command center, wearing a neural interface helmet connected to the main computer. Flash. He was running through a jungle. He wasn't human. He was a predator. He felt the weight of a massive tail for balance. He felt the hunger. He roared, and the sound shook the trees. Flash. He was a warrior in red armor, standing on a crystalline tower, holding a sword against a horde of clay soldiers. The Red Ranger represents the Tyrannosaurus. All Might's voice guided him. It is the spirit of courage. Aggression tempered by leadership. You must embrace the beast, Midoriya, but you must hold the leash. During these months, Izuku changed. The stuttering, flinching boy began to fade. He started to walk with a predator's grace. His eyes grew sharper. When Bakugo tried to trip him in the hallway at school, Izuku didn't flinch. He simply stepped over the foot without looking down, his mind occupied with the tactical layouts of the Zord systems he was studying. Month 6, the first summon. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. Izuku was exhausted. He was trying to move a rusted pickup truck frame. It was stuck in the mud. He pulled and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. Frustration boiled over. Damn it! Izuku yelled. Move! He didn't mean to morph. He didn't say the words, but his emotion spiked. The grid responded. A flash of red light didn't cover his body, but it coated his hand. Clang! Something heavy materialized in his grip. It wasn't the power sword. It was a red and white laser pistol that could fold into a dagger. Whoa! Izuku fell backward, dropping the gun in the sand. All Might deflated into his skinny form, coughing blood. Excellent! The blade blaster. Standard sidearm for the Ranger Corps. Izuku picked it up. It was heavy. I summoned it, without the suit? Partial manifestation, All Might noted, writing in a notebook. Dangerous. Drains stamina quickly. But useful. It means the bond is deepening. Izuku held the weapon. He aimed it at a pile of trash. He felt a trigger in his mind. Fire. Pew. A bolt of pinkish-red laser energy shot out, vaporizing a microwave. I'm gonna call it the Smash Blaster, Izuku said, grinning. That's derivative, All Might sighed. But acceptable. Month 7, 8, 9 Combat and the Zord. Now that Izuku had a weapon, the training shifted to combat. All Might wasn't a martial arts master in the technical sense. He was a brawler, but he knew how to fight. The suit gives you knowledge, All Might explained as he threw a sparring punch at Izuku. It downloads muscle memory from past rangers. But if your body doesn't know the moves, you'll be fighting the suit. You have to learn the forms so the suit enhances you, rather than puppeteering you. They practiced continuously. Izuku learned to mix the rigid, formal ranger combat styles, lots of posing and sweeping kicks, with his own chaotic, analytical style. But the biggest development came in month 9. Izuku was meditating in the command center. He was deep in the trance, visualizing the red coin. Suddenly, the floor shook. Earthquake? Izuku asked, eyes snapping open. No, All Might said, looking at the monitors. Seismic activity is localized, to you. Izuku felt a massive, thumping heartbeat. It wasn't his own. It was coming from deep, deep underground. Miles beneath the crust. Thump, 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 thump. It's him, Izuku whispered. The Tyrannosaurus. The Zords are awake, All Might said, his voice hushed. They are waiting for the call. But you are not ready to summon a Zord, Midoriya. That requires the full team. The power draw would kill you alone. But I can feel him, Izuku said, clutching his chest. He's lonely. He wants to fight. Soon, All Might promised. Soon, the morning of the exam, the 10 months were up. The sun rose over Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. Where there had once been mountains of trash, there was now only sparkling white sand and the pristine blue horizon of the ocean. Izuku stood at the top of the stairwell, looking down at his work. He was shirtless, sweating slightly. The transformation was startling. He wasn't bulky like All Might, but he was lean, ripped, and compact, a swimmer's build, dense with muscle. The morpher on his wrist seemed to shine brighter in the morning sun. All Might arrived, wearing his yellow suit, that was now far too big for his skeletal form. He looked at the beach, then at Izuku. Holy stinking super crap, All Might laughed. You actually finished early. It was just barely, Izuku said, pulling on a t-shirt. I feel ready. All Might walked over and handed Izuku a small water bottle. You did good, kid. You did really good. He looked at the horizon. I have to tell you something, Izuku. About the exam. Yeah? UA's entrance exam is biased. It favors combat quirks. Flashy destruction. Robots. Izuku nodded. I know. You can use the suit, All Might said. The faculty knows I have a protege. Though they don't know the specifics. They think I gave you a powerful support item to compensate for being quirkless. But you have to be careful. Careful of what? Of the time limit, All Might warned. We haven't tested a full morph since the incident. Based on your caloric intake and bioreadings, I estimate you have maybe 10 minutes of full ranger power before the suit force demorphs you and leaves you comatose. 10 minutes, Izuku repeated. That's not a lot. It's enough to save the world, All Might grinned, transforming into his buff form in a cloud of steam. It is enough to be a hero. All Might placed a heavy hand on Izuku's head. Go, young Midoriya. Go to UA. Show them that the age of quirks isn't the only power in this world. Show them the power of the grid. Izuku smiled. It was a fierce, confident smile, a smile he had learned from the Tyrannosaurus spirit. Yes, sir! The gates of UA. Izuku stood before the massive glass barrier of UA High. Students were swarming around him. Some had mutation quirks, some were emitting sparks or floating. Out of my way, Deku. Bakugo walked past him, bumping his shoulder. But this time, Izuku didn't stumble. He barely moved. Bakugo stopped. He looked back, eyeing Izuku's wrist. That watch again, Bakugo scowled. You really think some support trash is going to help you keep up with me? Izuku looked at Bakugo. He didn't feel the old fear. He felt the static humming in his ears. It's not trash, Kaken, Izuku said calmly. And I'm not here to keep up with you. He walked past Bakugo, his stride purposeful. I'm here to lead. Bakugo stared at Izuku's back, confused and irritated by the lack of flinching. Izuku walked toward the orientation hall. He gripped the strap of his backpack. The morpher was warm. 10 minutes, he thought. I have 10 minutes to prove I belong here. As he walked, he didn't notice a girl with a round face and brown hair tripping over her own feet a few yards away. He was too focused, but the grid noticed. As the girl began to fall, the pink coin in the hidden command center miles away let out a soft, single pulse of light. Potential candidate detected. Izuku paused. The static in his head spiked. He turned around just in time to see the girl floating, having slapped herself to stop her fall. Are you okay? Izuku asked, stepping toward her. She looked at him, beaming. Oh. I'm fine. I just got nervous. Izuku felt a strange resonance. The morpher felt lighter near her. Weird, he thought. Good luck, he said, bowing slightly. You too. She chirped. Izuku turned back to the building. The written exam was first. Then the practical. The dormant grid was waking up. And Izuku Midoriya was holding the key. A hero is not defined by their power, but by how they choose to use it when the clock is ticking. The written hurdle. The written portion of the UA High School entrance exam was, to Izuku Midoriya, a comforting stillness before the storm. The pencils scratched against paper in a rhythmic, ASMR-inducing chorus. For most, this was a hurdle of intellect. For Izuku, it was the only part of the day where the buzzing in his head, the low-frequency hum of the morphin grid, seemed to harmonize with his thoughts rather than distract him. He breezed through the questions. History of heroics? Easy. Quirk theory? Standard. Tactical analysis? He'd been doing this since he was 4, but as he filled in the bubbles, his left hand kept drifting to his wrist. The morpher was hidden under the sleeve of his middle school uniform, a cold, heavy weight against his pulse. Every time his skin brushed against the metal, he felt a spark. Not an electric shock, but a pulse of anticipation. It wants to be used, Izuku thought, staring at a question about search and rescue protocols. The Tyrannosaurus is restless. He finished with 20 minutes to spare. He looked up and caught the eye of Katsuki Bakugo 2 rows ahead. Bakugo was glaring at his paper as if he could intimidate the answers into revealing themselves. He didn't look back at Izuku. Since the sludge villain incident, Bakugo had been quieter. Not nicer, just brooding. Like a volcano waiting for a tectonic shift. The orientation. Welcome to my live show. President Mick's voice boomed through the auditorium, amplified by his quirk to ear-splitting levels. Everybody say hey. Silence. Tough crowd, the voice hero shrugged, adjusting his sunglasses. Izuku sat in the dark, his notebook out, scribbling furiously. Beside him, a boy with messy blonde hair and a black lightning bolt streak, Genki Kaminari, looked at him weirdly but said nothing. All right, examinees. Here's the deal. You'll be conducting a 10-minute mock urban battle. President Mike gestured to the screen behind him, which displayed a Super Mario-style map. You can bring whatever you want, gear, support items, lucky charms. Just make sure you're at your assigned battle center when the buzzer sounds. Izuku looked at his exam ticket. Battle Center B. You'll be facing 3 types of foe villains. Mike continued. 1-pointers, 2-pointers, and 3-pointers. The more difficult the villain, the higher the score. Eliminate them to earn points. Excuse me. May I ask a question? A spotlight hit a tall, bespectacled boy in the middle of the auditorium. Tenya Ida stood rigid, his hand raised like a knife. On the printout, there are 4 types of villains listed. If this is a misprint, then UA, the most prestigious school in Japan, should be ashamed of such a foolish error. We are here to be molded into exemplary heroes. Ida then spun around, pointing a finger directly at Izuku. And you! The one with the curly hair. You've been muttering this entire time. It's distracting. If you're here on a sightseeing trip, you should leave immediately. The auditorium went silent. All eyes turned to Izuku. In the past, Izuku would have shrunk into his seat, stammered an apology, and wished for the floor to swallow him whole. But as the eyes bored into him, the morpher on his wrist grew warm. Courage, the red coin seemed to whisper. A leader does not cower. Izuku stood up. His legs didn't shake. I'm sorry if I distracted you, Izuku said, his voice surprisingly steady, projecting clearly across the room. I was analyzing the potential structural weaknesses of the robots based on Mike-sensei's silhouettes. I tend to think aloud when I strategize. He bowed politely, then sat back down. Ida blinked, taken aback by the calm, reasoned response. He adjusted his glasses. I see. My apologies. He sat down. Okay. President Mike interjected, diffusing the tension. To answer the examinee's question, the 4th robot is a 0-pointer. Think of it like a thwomp in Mario. It's an obstacle. There's no point in fighting it, so if you see it, run away, Izuku muttered. Got it. Battle Center B, the staging area. The gates to Battle Center B were massive, towering walls of steel that separated the nervous students from the mock city inside. The crowd was a diverse mix of mutation quirks, flashy costumes, and nervous energy. Izuku stood near the back, stretching his legs. He wore a simple green tracksuit he had bought specifically for this day. It was durable, breathable, and wouldn't restrict the morpher. Hey, look at that guy, a student with sharp teeth whispered to his friend. He doesn't have a costume. Just a tracksuit. And what's that on his wrist? The friend replied, pointing. Is that a support item? I thought we weren't allowed support gear unless we registered a specific quirk disability. Maybe he is quirkless, someone sneered. Need a toy to pass the exam? Izuku ignored them. He was breathing in a specific rhythm All Might had taught him. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. It centered his bioelectric field. He saw the brunette girl from the entrance, Ochako Uraraka, standing near the front, looking nervous. He started to walk toward her to wish her luck, to thank her for being nice earlier. Stop right there. Ida blocked his path. The tall boy loomed over him, clad in a sleek athletic suit that accentuated the engines in his calves. Are you planning to distract that girl? Ida asked sternly. She is trying to focus. If you're looking to sabotage others to improve your odds, I was just going to wish her luck, Izuku interrupted, looking Ida in the eye. We're all nervous. A little kindness goes a long way. Ida paused, assessing Izuku. You have a strange aura about you. You don't seem like the others. Start! President Mick's voice screamed from a tower speaker, startling everyone. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Go! 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 While the other students were still processing the lack of a 3-2-1, Izuku moved. He didn't use a quirk. He used the explosive leg strength he had built hauling trash on Dagoba Beach for 10 months. He sprinted past Ida, a green blur. He's fast! Someone yelled. Izuku was the first one through the gates. The combat phase, civilian mode. The mock city was eerily realistic. Paved streets, office buildings, streetlights. The only thing missing was the people. Clank. Whir. A 1-pointer robot, a single-wheeled drone with target painting arms, rolled out from an alleyway. Target acquired, it droned. Izuku didn't slow down. He analyzed the robot in a split second. Center of gravity is high. Weak point is the sensory lens. He closed the distance. As the robot swung a mechanical arm, Izuku slid underneath it, baseball style. He grabbed the robot's manipulator arm as he passed, using his momentum to wrench it. Crunch. The arm bent, but the robot didn't stop. It spun around. Tougher than I thought, Izuku grunted, scrambling to his feet. Okay. Let's try this. He held out his right hand. He focused his will. The morpher flashed. Flash. The blade blaster materialized in his grip in its folded, pistol configuration. It was heavy, reassuring. Eat laser! Izuku yelled, pulling the trigger. PWPW. Two pinkish-red bolts of energy slammed into the one-pointer's sensory lens. The glass shattered, and the internal circuitry sparked. The robot wobbled and fell over, smoking. 1 point! Izuku shouted, checking his perimeter. He kept moving. Minutes passed. Izuku took down 2 more one-pointers and a 2-pointer using a combination of guerrilla tactics and the blaster. But he was struggling. The other students were catching up. Explosion! A blast rocked the street parallel to him. Bakugo was tearing through robots like wet tissue paper. Naval laser! A beam of light cut a 3-pointer in half. Engine boost. Ida kicked a robot's head clean off. Izuku checked his mental clock. 5 minutes gone. I have 6 points. That's not enough. Not even close. He rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. Blocking the street was a blockade of 4 3-pointer robots. These were massive, tank-treaded scorpions with missile launchers, loaded with non-lethal capture nets and paint rounds. They locked onto him instantly. Targets, 1, the lead robot intoned. Commencing suppression. Izuku raised his blaster, but he hesitated. The blaster overheats after rapid fire. I can't take 4 of them with just this. Behind him, other students were retreating. Whoa! That's too many! Run! Izuku looked at the robots. He looked at his wrist. All Might said I have 10 minutes of full power. I've used 5 minutes of exam time. If I morph now, I have to finish the exam in the suit. If I run out of power before the buzzer, I pass out. A missile whistled past his ear, exploding into a cloud of blue paint and concussive force against a building. No choice, Izuku growled. He holstered the blaster. It vanished into red particles. He stood his ground, legs spread shoulder-width apart. He brought his left wrist up to his face, his right hand hovering over the coin. The air around him seemed to grow heavy. The static in his head turned into a roar. It's morphin' time! The shout echoed through the street, louder than the grinding gears of the robots. Tyrannosaurus! A pillar of crimson energy erupted from the pavement, swallowing Izuku whole. The students running away stopped and turned, shielding their eyes. Inside the light, the grid reconstructed him. The suit wrapped around his limbs, spandex weave reinforced with tripolymer armor. The white diamonds formed on his chest. The helmet snapped shut, the T-Rex visor glowing black. The light shattered. The Red Ranger stood amidst the smoke. The 3-pointers paused, their sensors confused by the sudden energy spike. What is that? A student gasped. Is that his quirk? Transformation? Inside the helmet, Izuku's HUD lit up. Power level, 100%. Weapon, power sword ready. Let's dance, Izuku said, his voice amplified and metallic. He didn't run, he vanished. To the naked eye, he was a red streak. He appeared in front of the center robot. Power sword, he slashed upward. The blade, glowing with red plasma, sliced through the reinforced steel chassis of the 3-pointer effortlessly. The top half of the robot slid off the bottom half with a molten hiss. The other 3 robots fired. Izuku spun, deflecting the missiles with the flat of his blade. He leaped into the air, a 20-foot vertical jump that defied physics. Hi-ya! He came down on the second robot, driving the sword through its central processor. He landed, rolled, and summoned the blade blaster in his left hand, dagger mode. He threw it. The dagger flew like a dart, embedding itself in the third robot's eye. He finished the fourth one with a roundhouse kick that carried enough kinetic force to dent the armor plating inward, crushing the internal battery. 4 3-pointers. 10 seconds. Izuku retrieved his dagger and stood up. The other students were staring, mouths agape. That was awesome! A boy with tape elbows cheered. Izuku checked his HUD. Time remaining 4 minutes. Suit integrity, 98%. Keep moving! Izuku yelled to the others. Don't stop. He sprinted away, hunting for more targets. The observation room. In a darkened room lined with monitors, the faculty of UA High watched the chaos unfold. This year's crop is spirited, Midnight purred, watching Bakugo blow up a building. There's a lot of destructive potential, Ectoplasm nodded. But what about him? Snipe pointed to a screen labeled Battle Center B. It showed the Red Ranger tearing through a group of 2-pointers with a sword that glowed like a lightsaber. Midoriya Izuku, Principal Niza said, sipping tea. Registered quirk, none. None? Vlad King frowned. That's clearly a transformation type. Or a high-level emitter focusing energy through a suit. We checked his gear, Power Loader chimed in, tapping furiously on a tablet. The device on his wrist is unknown technology. It emits no radio waves, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth. But the energy output? It rivals a small nuclear reactor. He's fast, Aizawa muttered, his eyes narrowed. Efficient. He's not just using power. He has martial arts training. But look at his movement. It's stiff. He's fighting the suit's torque. He reminds me of someone, Midnight tapped her chin. The colors, the posing. In the back of the room, All Might, in his skeletal form, sat silently, sweating bullets. Don't show off too much, young Midoriya. You're going to give me a heart attack. Well, Niza smiled, his beady eyes gleaming. Combat ability is high. But let's see how they handle true despair. Niza pressed a large red button. The 0-pointer rises. The ground didn't just shake, it convulsed. Izuku had just finished dismantling a 2-pointer when the street beneath him buckled. Dust billowed from the end of the main thoroughfare. A shadow fell over the city. Emerging from the ground was a monstrosity. The 0-pointer. It was taller than the surrounding buildings, a green, gargantuan robot with tank treads the size of houses and a face that looked like a jagged skull. It roared, a mechanical screech that shattered windows for blocks. This is a joke, right? A student whimpered. The 0-pointer punched a building. The structure collapsed like a house of cards, debris raining down into the street. Run! The panic was instantaneous. The students turned and fled, screaming. The instinct for self-preservation overrode everything else. Izuku turned to run with them. It's an obstacle, Mike had said. Running is the correct answer. He took a step back. Oh wow! A cry of pain cut through the roar of the robot. Izuku froze. His helmet's audio receptors isolated the sound. He turned back. In the middle of the street, directly in the path of the 0-pointer, Ochako Uraraka was trapped. A large piece of concrete debris had pinned her leg. She was struggling to lift it, but her strength was failing. The 0-pointer loomed over her, its massive tread grinding the pavement as it advanced. It wasn't targeting her specifically, it was just moving. But the result would be the same. She's going to be crushed. Izuku looked at the fleeing students. Even Ida was running, focused on the objective. Time limit, Izuku's mind screamed. If I fight that thing, I'll burn out the suit. I'll fail the exam. But the Red Ranger didn't run from danger. The Tyrannosaurus didn't retreat, and neither did Izuku Midoriya. No! Izuku spun around. He ignored the timer. He ignored the logic. He sprinted toward the giant robot. Midoriya! Ida stopped, looking back. What are you doing? Izuku reached Uraraka. He grabbed the concrete slab. Servos whined. With a grunt, he heaved the ton of rock off her leg. Can you walk? His robotic voice asked. I think it's broken, Uraraka gasped, tears in her eyes. She looked up at the red helmet. You came back? The 0-pointer was 50 feet away. Its massive hand was descending to sweep the street clear. Izuku looked up. The hand was the size of a bus. Even with the suit, even with the power sword, he couldn't stop that mass. Physics was against him. I need more power. I need mass. The ground beneath him began to heat up. Thump thump. The heartbeat returned. Louder than ever. It wasn't just in his head anymore. The asphalt around his boots began to crack, glowing with molten red light. Zord uplink detected. Warning, user stamina critical. Warning, unauthorized summon. I don't care. Izuku screamed inside his helmet. He grabbed Uraraka and shoved her behind him. Stay back. He looked at the 0-pointer. He threw his arms up, palms facing the sky. We need Dinozord power. Now, the world went red. The street erupted. Not with debris, but with fire. A fissure opened up between Izuku and the 0-pointer. From the depths of the earth, amidst a geyser of magma and steam, A massive metal head emerged. Red plating. Green eyes. Razor-sharp teeth. A roar shook the entire battle center. A primal, biological roar that drowned out the mechanical screech of the zero-pointer. The Tyrannosaurus dinosaur rose from the molten fissure. It wasn't the full height of the zero-pointer, maybe half the size, but it was dense, sleek, and radiated power. It stood fully, its tail smashing a building behind it. It looked down at Izuku. "Get in!" Izuku gasped. He leaped. The Zord lowered its head. A hatch opened on the top of the skull. Izuku landed inside. Cockpit of the beast. The interior was tight, filled with flashing lights and a smell of ozone and old leather. Izuku strapped into the pilot's seat. He grabbed the dual control sticks. System online. The view screen showed the zero-pointer looming over them. "Let's show this pile of scrap who's the apex predator." Izuku slammed the controls forward. Outside, the T-Rex Zord charged. It didn't have the size, but it had the speed. It lowered its shoulder and rammed into the zero-pointer's midsection. Clang boom. The impact was like a bomb going off. The zero-pointer, caught off balance, stumbled backward. Its massive tread slipped on the debris. "Tail whipper!" Izuku yelled, yanking the stick left. The Zord spun, its massive metal tail slamming into the zero-pointer's knee joint. Metal sheared. Sparks flew like fireworks. The zero-pointer toppled. It fell in slow motion, crashing into a row of mock office buildings away from Uraraka. The ground jumped 10 feet into the air. Silence fell over the battle center. Inside the cockpit, alarms were blaring. Energy depleted. Connection unstable. Demorph. No. Not yet. Izuku whispered. "Just make sure she's safe." The T-Rex Zord turned its head toward Uraraka. It let out a low, gentle growl. Then, it began to fade. The red energy dissipated. The Zord dissolved into particles of light, returning to the grid. Izuku fell from the air where the head had been, hitting the ground hard. The suit flickered. Once. Twice. Zap. The helmet vanished. The armor dissolved. Izuku lay face down on the pavement in his green tracksuit, steam rising from his body. His left arm, where the morpher sat, was burned red, blistering from the heat. "Time's up," the buzzer sounded. "The exam is over." Aftermath. Izuku couldn't move. He could hear footsteps running toward him. Hey, are you okay?" It was the Uraraka girl. He stopped it, another voice said. He summoned a dinosaur robot and knocked over the zero-pointer. "What kind of quirk is that? Is he dead?" "Move aside, dearies." A short, elderly woman hobbled through the crowd. Recovery girl. She looked at Izuku's state, the burns on his arm, the utter exhaustion. "My goodness," she tooted. "He used up every drop of his life force. What a reckless boy." She leaned down and kissed his forehead. A warm glow enveloped him. Some of the pain receded, but the exhaustion remained. "Get a stretcher." Recovery girl ordered the robots. "This one is going to the infirmary." As the robots lifted him, Ida watched from the side. He looked at his own pristine armor, then at the unconscious boy who had sacrificed everything for a stranger. He had 0 points, Ida whispered to himself. I saw his score. He spent the last of his time saving her, knowing it would gain him nothing. Ida clenched his fist. He is more of a hero than any of us. 1 week later, Izuku sat in his bedroom, staring at the envelope on his desk. His arm was bandaged. The burns were healing, but they were a stark reminder of the Zord's power. All Might had scolded him for an hour, then cried tears of joy for another hour. I failed, Izuku sighed. I took down some robots, but I wasted the last half of the exam. I probably didn't get enough combat points. He ripped the envelope open. A holographic disc fell out. It projected onto the wall. I am here. All Might appeared in a projection, wearing a yellow suit. As a projection, All Might? Izuku blinked. But I just saw you downstairs. Young Midoriya. You have walked a long, hard road. The written exam? Passed. But the practical, you scored 28 combat points. Izuku's head dropped. 28. The cutoff is usually 40. However, All Might shouted. A hero's job is to save people. Did you think a hero's school would reject someone who saved a life? The video changed. It showed Uraraka standing in front of President Mike. Please! Give him my points! He saved me! He summoned that giant lizard thing and saved me. Izuku's eyes widened. You have your own fan club. But we cannot give away points. Instead, we have rescue points. A scoreboard appeared. Izuku Midoriya, villain points, 28. Rescue points, 60. Total, 88. 60 points. All Might bellowed. The judges were blown away. The risk. The power. The dinosaur. You passed with flying colors. All Might reached a hand toward the camera. Welcome, Izuku Midoriya. Welcome to your hero academia. Izuku stared at the screen. Tears streamed down his face. He clutched the morpher on his wrist. I did it, he whispered. We did it. The red coin hummed, a warm, satisfied vibration. The first step was taken, but in the shadows of the city, unseen by the cameras, a green light flickered in a dark alleyway, responding to the awakening of the red Zord. The grid does not choose randomly. It seeks frequencies. It seeks the echo of the ancient warriors and the souls of the new, the weight of morning. The morning of the first day at UA High School was defined not by the chirping of birds or the warmth of the sun, but by the cold, unyielding weight on Izuku Midoriya's left wrist. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror, tying his tie with trembling fingers. The standard gray UA uniform was crisp, smelling of starch and new fabric. But his left sleeve was different. His mother, Inko, had spent the previous night carefully tailoring it, adding a discreet zipper and widening the cuff so it could fit over the morpher without bulging awkwardly. Izuku stared at the device. In the dim light of the bathroom, the golden coin, the Tyrannosaurus, seemed to be sleeping. But Izuku knew better. He could feel it, a low, constant thrumming against his radial artery. It was a second heartbeat, slower and deeper than his own, pacing him. Thump thump. Thump thump. Izuku! You're going to be late. Inko's voice drifted from the kitchen, laced with the frantic energy of a mother whose son was entering the most dangerous high school in the country. Coming, Mom! Izuku grabbed his yellow backpack. He took a deep breath, looking at his reflection. He didn't look like the trembling boy from middle school anymore. The 10 months of hell on the beach and the awakening of the grid had changed him. His jaw was set. His eyes were sharper. He wasn't just Izuku Midoriya, the quirkless kid. He was the Red Ranger. You have to be both, All Might's voice echoed in his memory. The mask protects the man, but the man defines the mask. He walked out the door, the static in his head buzzing with anticipation. The giant door, UA High, was massive. Everything about it was designed to intimidate, to make you feel small in the face of heroism. The main gate was a fortress. The hallways were wide enough for giants, and the door to Class 1A was, frankly, ridiculous. It stood 20 feet tall, a slab of reinforced steel painted with a bold red 1A. Izuku stood before it, clutching his backpack straps. This is it. The top hero course. He could hear voices inside. Loud, confident voices. Please don't be in my class. Please don't be in my class. He pushed the door open. Remove your foot from that desk immediately. Ha! Who are you to tell me what to do, Four Eyes? Izuku froze. His two nightmares were currently engaged in a shouting match in the front row. Tenya Ida, the stiff, bespectacled boy from the entrance exam, was chopping the air with his hand, scolding Katsuki Bakugo, who was resting his feet on the desk with a look of pure insolence. It is disrespectful to the UA upperclassmen who used this desk before you. And to the craftsman who built it. Craftsman? Bakugo scoffed, small explosions popping in his palms. You're annoying. What junior high are you from, Extra? I am from semi-private academy. My name is Tenya Ida. Sama? A stuck-up elite, huh? I'll have fun crushing you. Crushing me? You truly wish to become a hero with that attitude? Izuku tried to back out of the room, but the door clicked behind him. Both heads snapped toward him. Ah! Ida stood up straight. It's you! The entire class turned to look. Ida marched toward Izuku, his engines whirring softly. Midoriya. I must apologize for my behavior at the entrance exam. I misjudged you completely. You perceived the true nature of the test, the rescue points, while I was blinded by the superficial objective. I hate to admit it, but you are the better candidate. No, Izuku waved his hands, panicking slightly. I just moved without thinking. Really? Oh. It's the plain-looking boy. A bubbly voice cut through the tension. Ochako Uraraka appeared behind Ida, beaming. You got in. I was so worried. Your arm was all burned up. She mimed an explosion with her hands. But that punch! And the dinosaur robot! That was amazing! Was that a summoning quirk? Or a construct? Izuku felt the heat rise in his cheeks. It was, Before he could answer, the morpher on his wrist pulsed. It wasn't the usual rhythmic thrum. It was a sharp, warm spike. Like a chime ringing in his mind. Ping! Izuku blinked. He looked at Uraraka. The sensation was coming from her. Or rather, the grid was reacting to her proximity. What was that? Izuku thought. The morpher, it likes her? If you're here to make friends, you can pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The three students looked down. Lying in the doorway, encased in a bright yellow sleeping bag like a monolithic caterpillar, was a man with messy black hair and bloodshot eyes. He sipped a juice pouch. This is the hero course, the man deadpanned. He stood up, shedding the sleeping bag in one fluid motion. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough. He walked to the podium. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. The class gasped. Homeroom teacher? Put these on, Aizawa said, pulling a stack of blue gym uniforms from his sleeping bag. And meet me on the P grounds. He paused, his eyes sliding over the class until they locked onto Izuku. Specifically onto Izuku's left wrist. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. And Midoriya. We need to talk about your accessory, the assessment. The locker room was a buzz of activity. The boys were changing quickly, showing off their quirks. A boy with elbows that looked like tape dispensers was chatting with a guy who had a bird head. Izuku changed in the corner, keeping his back to the others. He pulled the gym uniform jacket on carefully, zipping it up to his chin. The sleeves were elastic, hugging his wrists. The morpher created a noticeable bulge, but at least the metal wasn't exposed. Hey man! A hand slapped Izuku's back. He jumped. Standing there was a boy with spiky red hair and a shark-toothed grin. Eijiro Kirishima. I saw you at the entrance exam. You're the one who summoned the T-Rex, right? That was so manly. Ping. The morpher spiked again. Harder this time. A deep, heavy resonance that felt like a bass drum in Izuku's chest. Izuku stared at Kirishima. Another one? Thanks, Izuku managed. I'm Midoriya. Kirishima? Let's do our best out there. As they walked out to the field, the buzzing in Izuku's head grew louder. It wasn't painful, but it was distracting. It felt like a radio scanning for stations. On the field, Aizawa stood with a tablet. A quirk assessment test? The class shouted in unison. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Uraraka asked. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa said coldly. UA's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well. He looked at the class. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school without using your quirks. The country is still insisting on prohibiting quirks for sports measurements. It's irrational. Aizawa turned to Bakugo. Bakugo. How far could you throw a softball in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He smirked. Die. Boom. He added a massive explosion to his throw. The ball rocketed into the sky. 705 meters, Aizawa read from his device. The class erupted. Awesome. We can use our quirks as much as we want? This looks like fun. Aizawa's expression darkened. Fun? You have 3 years to become a hero. You think it's going to be all fun and games? He grinned, a terrifying expression that stretched his face. Right. Whoever ranks last in total score will be judged to have no potential, and will be instantly expelled. The air left the clearing. Expelled? Uraraka cried. On the first day? That's unfair. Natural disasters, highway pileups, rampaging villains, Aizawa listed. Calamity is always unfair. Heroes are the ones who correct that unfairness. If you wanted to hang out at a burger joint after school, you picked the wrong place. He looked directly at Izuku. Welcome to the Department of Heroics. The resonance of the grid. The tests began. For most students, it was a display of genetic superiority. For Izuku, it was a test of restraint. I have a limit, he reminded himself. All Might said 10 minutes of full morph. But what about partial summoning? What about passive enhancement? Test 1, 50-meter dash. Izuku was paired against Bakugo. Ready, go! The robot signaled. Bakugo launched himself with explosions. Explosive speed. Izuku didn't morph. He relied on the muscle he had built. He sprinted, his legs pumping like pistons. Bakugo crossed at 4.13 seconds. Izuku crossed at 7.02. TCH. Slow, Bakugo sneered. But in the next heat, it was Ida versus the frog girl, Azuri. Ida crouched. Engine boost. Ping. The morpher reacted violently. A sharp, electric blue light flashed in Izuku's mind. He felt a sensation of speed, of tactical precision. Blue, Izuku thought, rubbing his temples. Why does Ida feel blue? Ida crossed the line in 3.04 seconds. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku squeezed the device. 56 kilograms. Above average for a teen, but nothing super. Next to him, the multi-armed boy, Shoji, scored 540 kilograms. Then Kirishima stepped up. HNNNNGH. His skin hardened into rock. The device creaked. Ping. The morpher thrummed with a heavy, solid weight. It felt like a mountain. It felt like unshakable defense. Black, Izuku realized. Kirishima feels like the mastodon. Test 3, standing long jump. Izuku managed to clear the sandpit using his leg strength. Then Mina Ishido, the pink-skinned girl with horns, stepped up. She used acid to slide, but her jump was pure athleticism. She bounced with an energy that was infectious. Ping. Yellow sparks danced in Izuku's vision. Agility. Spirit. Ferocity. Yellow. The saber-tooth. Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Mineta, the great boy, was fast. But when Uraraka went, using her gravity to make herself light. Ping. Pink warmth. Uplifting. Anti-gravity. Pink. The pterodactyl. Izuku stood on the sidelines, his heart racing. He wasn't just watching his classmates, he was watching a puzzle assemble itself. The grid is dormant, All Might had said. It is looking for conductors. It's looking for them. Midoriya. Aizawa's voice snapped him back to reality. You're distracted. And your scores are mediocre. You're ranking at the bottom. Izuku looked at the scoreboard. It was true. Without using the suit, he was just a very fit athletic human. In a world of monsters, that wasn't enough. I'm saving it, Izuku stammered. Saving it for what? Aizawa asked, his voice low so only Izuku could hear. The retirement home? The ball throw, Ranger versus Erasure. Midoriya. You're up. Izuku walked to the circle. He held the softball. He looked at Aizawa. He looked at the class. Bakugo was watching him with a predatory gaze. If I don't use the power, I'm expelled. But if I use the full suit, I might drain the battery for the rest of the day. And Aizawa hates flashy quirks. I need precision. Izuku took a deep breath. He focused on the coin. He visualized the energy not as a flood, but as a stream. He directed it to his right arm, just the arm. Channel the Tyranno's strength. He wound up. He felt the energy build. Red lightning crackled faintly around his fingers. Smash! He threw. But the moment the ball left his fingertips, the energy vanished. The red lightning snuffed out. The ball flew. 46 meters. Huh! Izuku blinked. But I felt it. I erased it. Izuku turned. Aizawa's hair was floating. His scarf was hovering around him like a snake. His eyes glowed an eerie red. That device on your wrist, Aizawa said, walking closer. I've been watching you. You hesitate before every action. And just now, I saw the energy build up. Aizawa grabbed Izuku with his capture scarf, pulling him close. The entrance exam was irrational enough. A boy with 0 quirk factor suddenly summoning a giant robot. And now, you rely on a piece of tech that I can't identify. Aizawa glared. I looked at your file, Midoriya. Quirkless. That's what it says. So tell me, what makes you think you can stand in the same ring as these students with nothing but a battery pack? Izuku gritted his teeth. It's not a battery pack. Whatever it is, Aizawa hissed, if it breaks, you're useless. If it runs out of power, you're a liability. You can't save anyone if you're constantly checking your charge meter. Aizawa deactivated his erasure. His hair fell. I tried to erase your quirk just now. But nothing happened to you physically. The energy just stopped flowing. Which confirms it. You are relying on external power. Power that can be taken away. He released Izuku. I gave you a chance. You have 1 throw left. Hurry up and get it over with. Izuku stood in the circle, rubbing his neck. Aizawa was right. The suit had a limit. The Zords had a limit. If the Morpher was destroyed, he was just Izuku again. But he's wrong about one thing. Izuku looked at the red coin. The power doesn't come from the coin. The coin is the key. The power comes from the grid. And the grid is everywhere. And he couldn't erase it. Aizawa thought he had erased it. But he hadn't. The erasure quirk works on biological quirk factors. It stops the gene from activating. But the grid isn't biological. The energy stopped because I faltered, Izuku realized. Because I got scared when he looked at me. A slow smile spread across Izuku's face. He can't erase the grid. Izuku picked up the ball. Hey, Aizawa-sensei, Izuku said quietly. Aizawa looked back, bored. You said I'm relying on a battery. You said I'm powerless without it. Izuku squeezed the ball. But a ranger isn't the suit. The suit is just the armor. He spread his legs. He didn't try to channel the power subtly this time. He let the static roar. Tyranno power! He didn't morph fully. He didn't need to. He commanded the grid to reinforce his muscular structure. Red veins of energy surged visibly beneath the skin of his right arm, tearing through the fabric of his gym uniform sleeve. The Morpher word. Aizawa's eyes widened. I'm using erasure right now. Why isn't it stopping? Izuku threw. The ball broke the sound barrier. Boom! A shockwave blasted the dust from the circle. Aizawa's hair blew back from the wind pressure alone. The ball soared. And soared. It vanished into the clouds. Beep! Aizawa looked at the device. He looked at Izuku. He looked at the device again. He turned the screen to the class. 706.0 meters. Izuku stood panting, his right arm throbbing with a dull ache. It wasn't the bone-breaking pain of One for All. It was the strain of channeling pure energy through flesh. He clenched his fist. The red energy faded. Sensei, Izuku said, staring Aizawa down. I'm still standing. The explosion. The class was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then pure chaos. He got over 700 meters. Wait, his arm glowed. Was that a strength enhancer? I thought he was quirkless. DKU. The screen tore through the air like a jagged knife. Bakugo Katsuki was vibrating. His hands were smoking. His eyes were popped wide with a mixture of rage and confusion that looked like madness. You bastard! Bakugo sprinted toward Izuku. Tell me what the hell is going on. You're quirkless. You've always been quirkless. Did you cheat? Did you steal that tech? Izuku flinched instinctively, raising his arms. But before Bakugo could reach him, a white cloth wrapped around the blonde teen, binding his arms to his sides. Gah! Bakugo struggled. What is this cloth? It's stiff. It's a capture weapon made of carbon fiber and a special metal alloy, Aizawa muttered, holding the other end of the scarf. Stand down. Don't make me use my quirk again. I have dry eye. He released Bakugo, who stumbled back, breathing heavily. We're wasting time, Aizawa said. Next person. But Bakugo didn't look at the teacher. He looked at Izuku. Answer me, Bakugo growled, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Where did you get that power? The old Izuku would have lied. He would have stuttered out an excuse about a latent quirk, or a lucky break. But the Red Ranger stood tall. Izuku lowered his arm. He touched the morpher. I didn't steal it, Kaken, Izuku said, his voice level. And I didn't cheat. He looked Bakugo in the eye. It chose me. Bakugo recoiled as if slapped. Chose you? You always said I was an extra, Izuku continued. That I was a pebble on the side of the road. Maybe you were right. I don't have a quirk. I don't have what you have. Izuku clenched his fist over the coin. But the world is bigger than quirks. And I'm not going to be a pebble anymore. I'm going to be a hero. He turned and walked back to the group. Uraraka was staring at him with wide eyes. That was intense. Ida pushed his glasses up. He stood his ground against Bakugo. Remarkable. Kirishima punched his palm. So manly. The static in Izuku's head hummed a satisfied tune. The scoreboard. The rest of the tests went by in a blur. Izuku used small bursts of grid energy to enhance his sit-ups and toe touches, careful not to overdo it. At the end of the day, Aizawa projected the results. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 10. Izuku Midoriya. 20. Minoru Mineta. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. 10th. Middle of the pack. Safe. By the way, Aizawa said, dismissing the hologram. I was lying about the expulsion. Huh? The class screamed. It was a logical ruse to draw out your upper limits, Aizawa smirked. I knew it, Yaoyorozu said confidently. It was obvious. No, it wasn't, the rest of the class thought. Aizawa turned to leave. There are handouts in the classroom. Midoriya, come to the faculty office later. We need to document that, equipment, the hidden observation. As the students filed out, exhausted but excited, Aizawa rounded the corner of the building. All Might was waiting there, hiding behind a wall. Aizawa! All Might whispered loudly. You liar! You actually intended to expel someone, didn't you? You expelled an entire class last year, Aizawa shrugged. They had zero potential. This group is different. He looked at the list on his tablet. That kid, Midoriya? He's reckless. He's reliant on a tool I don't understand. And he has a target on his back from Bakugo. But? All Might prompted. But Aizawa sighed, he has guts. And for a second there, when he threw that ball, Aizawa looked at his own hand. I felt something. When I tried to erase his power, it felt like I was staring into a void. It wasn't biological. It was ancient. Aizawa pocketed the tablet. Whatever he is, All Might, keep a close eye on him. Because something tells me he's going to attract trouble. The Call of the Colors. That evening, as the sun set over Muzurifu, 5 teenagers went home with a strange feeling in their chests. In the Ida household, Tenya polished his glasses, feeling a strange desire to study strategy instead of just running. In the Uraraka apartment, Ochako stared at the ceiling, feeling lighter than usual, a pink warmth filling her heart. In the Kirishima house, Aijiro did push-ups, feeling stronger, like a mountain that couldn't be moved. In the Ashido residence, Mina danced around her room, her energy boundless, feeling like a predator on the prowl. And in the Midoriya apartment, Izuku sat at his desk, the morpher plugged into a diagnostic cable he had jury-rigged based on All Might's instructions. Diagnostic complete. Grid sync rate, 12%. Candidate resonance detected, 4 signatures. Izuku stared at the screen. 4 signatures, he whispered. He thought back to the test. The blue flash from Ida. The pink warmth from Uraraka. The black weight from Kirishima. The yellow spark from Mina. It can't be a coincidence, Izuku muttered. He looked at the morpher. You're looking for them, aren't you? The rest of the team. The Tyrannosaurus coin gleamed in the lamplight. The team was assembling. They didn't know it yet. They didn't have coins. They didn't have Zords. But the grid had marked them, and somewhere in the dark, deep within the shadows of the League of Villains hideout, a scrying glass cracked. Found them, a rasping, ancient voice hissed. The 5 lights have returned.